Hello, my friends. Welcome to our Friday Greenhouse Chats. This is a little bit different today. As you know, I am Lindsay, your energy guide along the shores of Newfoundland. And my Greenhouse Chats has been a little bit of like thought shots, little moments of me sharing wisdom, sharing ways in which you can think a little bit differently, some tools and techniques, some breath work. I throw it all out there, but today we have a guest, a beautiful, awesome, amazing human that I've not met yet in real life. I followed along his journey on social media as we chatted just off record. We have a love-hate relationship with social media, but without it, we would not have met. We would not be here today to share his wisdom to all of you and to me. And yeah, I was just going to dive a little bit into, and I will introduce Mr. Dr. Brian Dower. Brian,
Thank
how
you.
are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm happy to be in your greenhouse. I'm sure it'd be nicer if we were actually in your greenhouse, but this will work
Yes.
well.
You're tuning in from Ontario, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm from Newfoundland, but I'm living in Toronto. Have been here for about half my life. Yeah.
Which is amazing. And you said that, so yeah, you lived for 28 years in
hmm
Newfoundland?
Yeah. The first 28 years in Newfoundland, and I guess the next half of that was spent mostly here in Toronto. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. So, Dr. Dower, you were not always in the mindfulness world, although it was a large part of your life. How about you tell us a little bit about the trajectory of what got you from Newfoundland to Ontario, and from becoming how you became a mindfulness guru, coach, thought leader.
Great. Thank you for that. And I will do that if we don't call me Dr. Dower anymore. We'll call me Brian, please.
Dr. Brian.
It's Brian. Brian's great. Yeah. So I grew up in St. John's and went through the system there, the schooling, graduated, and worked for the first 6 years after graduation in advertising with target marketing. And I was hired the same month that Newfoundland Tourism awarded their account to Target Marketing. So from the get-go, I was surrounded by all these people who were so interested in promoting Newfoundland in a different way than had been promoted before. You know, it was more about let's take pride in what we have and let's take pride in our geography and the rawness of it. And we're not Toronto and we are not Toronto. So it was fun to be there when they were building that. And I think that shifted a lot within me because,
I love
growing
it.
up, a lot of us were like thinking, oh, you do well when you get away from Newfoundland, when you move to Toronto. And it's so not true. So that shift started back in 92. And I worked in advertising for 6 years and it was intense. But towards the end of that period, I knew I wanted to work with people in a different way. So moved to Toronto to become a chiropractor, followed in my younger brother's footsteps, and graduated after 4 years of additional schooling and then had a practice in downtown Toronto at Young and Bloor. And I was there for about 18 years. But it was in the 14th year, 12th year, 14th year, I injured my wrist at work. And as a chiropractor, any kind of person who works with the body, if you don't have a wrist,
Yeah.
it's difficult. So I hired someone to work alongside me, and I spent about 4 years just traveling around North America, seeing the best of the best specialists, like the Maple Leafs wrist surgeon, the people who write instability research on wrists,
Yeah.
and tried everything. Like I did it all, and it just wouldn't stabilize. And
Yeah.
when that happened, I'm a Newfoundlander. I come by my inner stress and anxiety. I think it's in my DNA. And when my practice was in, like, I was like, what am I going to do? My stress levels went way, way up. And so I knew about mindfulness. I had a baseline understanding. And I dove into it fully, mostly as an attempt to decrease my level of stress and suffering. It was basically, I need something. It wasn't for fulfillment or enlightenment. It was like, I need to decrease the stress. And so I tried that. I sold the practice after the wrist not stabilizing, just before the pandemic hit. Literally before the pandemic hit, I sold the practice.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
divine timing.
Yeah. I was lucky because the guy who was working with me was able to buy the practice. So it was a great transition and I was able to move away. And then I just dove deeper and deeper and deeper into my training and certification. And so now I'm a teacher and a trainer, and I work with corporate clients doing workshops and strategies for them. I work with one-on-one clients. I do classes. And then my main love, my passion is doing retreats and getting people, especially people who are new to mindfulness, people who have no idea what it's about, getting them into the shallow end of the pool. Yeah.
That is quite the trajectory
Mm.
and a big shift from advertising in Newfoundland to becoming a chiropractor and owning your own practice to now becoming what you're passionate about right now is through mindfulness. I love it. I love that you could approach each of those pieces with plot twists and openness, and it's what is so fantastic about you. When it comes to the retreats, that's how I actually just seen your name. It was you were hosting a retreat out at in Torres Cove at
Yes.
the Cliff's Edge retreat. And I was like, okay, I'm loving what this guy is doing because for everybody that knows me, I have the MUGUP meditation experience and also host retreats. And my goal is to, when someone Googles, like puts into Google wellness retreat or island or wellness or anything, I want Newfoundland and Labrador to be the first hit. Not necessarily the MUGUP meditation or my name, it's just our island, our province here. So knowing that you are now in Ontario for half your life now, you said like almost on the cusp of living in Ontario as long as you lived in Newfoundland. It's so awesome that you're bringing your work and the people who do work with you to our island, to our province to do this work. It's quite remarkable. Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing to see. And it's fun because you started out in advertising in tourism for Newfoundland and Labrador for that campaign. And now you're on the other end of that stick, we'll say. You're bringing people in the tourism industry.
Yeah, no, I've always been, I guess, a quiet ambassador of Newfoundland. And I think it was 2018. I had an aunt who was turning 90, and I suggested to a bunch of cousins, like, we should go. We should go back and visit her. And so, as part of that, I planned like a little motor coach tour for my cousins. A lot of them hadn't been there in a long time, and then showing them around Newfoundland. And they were just like, they forgot or they hadn't been before. And oh, this is great. And the next year, my partner and I got married in Toronto, but we did a second little reception at the rooms. And then again, 35 people from Toronto flew in. I'm like, oh, and then I did the same thing. We had a hike and we had a, so it just really spurred in me that idea that, people still don't completely understand Newfoundland. And I chuckle to myself when someone says, "Oh, yeah, I've been to Nova Scotia." I'm like, "Yeah, you haven't been to Newfoundland." And I flew over Newfoundland on my way to Iceland to do, I'm like, "No, you need to stop in
Drop
Newfoundland."
down.
So
Yeah.
my goal has been doing these retreats in Newfoundland and trying to do different things, like different experiences, different lengths. But again, sometimes they target Newfoundlanders, which is great because, again, we, like a lot of people, need that moment of awareness and ability to tap into it. But I love bringing people who haven't been to Newfoundland there. And you know what it's like when you bring people to Newfoundland and they're going, really?
Yeah.
Really? So I love
Yeah.
that, matching all that together. So it's been lovely. Yeah, it's been great.
I love that. I always feel like every MUGUP, every hike, every experience that I go on here, it's like I'm a tourist. It's like it's new to me all over again. It could be the same trail, but yet I'm in such awe every single time. However, when I do a MUGUP with international travelers, they just seeing it through their eyes and feeling it as they feel it, it is really special. And that's kind of where the mindfulness, how you and I connect that way, is because a lot of the work that I do embraces a lot of the mindfulness practices, because I always say there's an essence here on our island. And in order to feel it, you need to connect with yourself first. You know, you need to really connect with yourself. And once you get it, once you connect, once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. And then you're in, then you're locked in. And I also say that Newfoundlanders are like salmon, no matter how far away from home they may go, they'll always come back to where they're imprinted, or at least for a visit or to stay. So yeah, it's really, really beautiful. When it comes to mindfulness, we know that you kind of got into it because of the stress and anxiety and some depressive feelings because of what you were going through an injury. What are your favorite pieces of mindfulness? It's like a buzzword right now. Like when you say like mindfulness practices, it could mean so much to so many
Yeah.
people. What is your definition, we'll say? What is your approach to sharing what mindfulness is?
Yeah, I'd love to chat about that for a second. It's fun because a lot of people, especially when you're doing like a corporate work with corporate clients, people just kind of say, oh, he's going to ask me to meditate and stare at a candle at dawn for an hour. And like, that's just not, it's beautiful. And I do that. I love silent meditation retreats for a week long, but that's not accessible or interesting to a lot of people.
No.
So I always differentiate up front what mindfulness is from what meditation is. Because again, that myth, that
Mm.
misunderstanding can really help clear things up. So meditation, I say meditation is the thing that you do. You sit usually in silence without a lot of movement, and you drop into what's going on in you and around you. So mindfulness is just paying attention to the present moment with curiosity and an openness to be there. So mindfulness is kind of like an overarching umbrella of how you can be. Meditation is just one way you can be mindful. So, like, let's
Mhm.
say you and I both want to get healthy. Healthy is our goal. You might do spin classes, and I might do water aerobics. We're both doing different things to become healthy. So, meditation itself, like silent meditation, is one way to be mindful, but there's so many other ways to be mindful. And like you do it, like, through yoga. Yoga is mindfulness.
Yeah.
A really good lead or good led hike along the coast, East Coast Trail, that can be mindfulness. Paying attention to the flavor of your coffee beans when you're having that in the morning, that can be mindfulness. It's basically tapping into the sensory information you're getting at this point in time, whether it's something physical or something you're noticing inside you, a thought, an emotion, but objectively, like not getting lost in the story of it, because we're really good at telling ourselves stories and making up stories.
Yeah.
We're not good at stopping outside of it and objectively saying, what's that all about? Huh. I didn't
Mm.
realize I had tension in my left shoulder that I don't have in my right shoulder. That's interesting. What can I do about that? Or that the butterflies in my stomach, is that fear about bad news, or am I getting on a
Excitement.
roller coaster? Like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
figuring it out and makes it a lot easier to be with yourself when you can sit with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that. I love that you could share that, because a lot of people kind of blend in meditation to mindfulness. And in order to be mindful, you need to be able to meditate every morning. And I always say that we don't have to be Buddhas on a hill.
Yeah.
Like it's nice. It'd be cool to be able to be that to be accessible to us. But just taking a nice breath in and noticing where the breath goes.
Yeah.
Just notice. Notice what happens to your shoulders when I say soften.
Yeah.
Being mindful. Notice when I say when you're holding an orange, what happens to your mouth? you know, all of those ways we can become more mindful. And in this society, this culture right now we're in, it's everything. I don't like to use the term rat race, but it's kind of like
Mhm.
this big rat race. And it's so difficult for people to even take a breath that they know that they're taking.
Yeah.
Our brains will make us breathe and keep us alive, but to know that we're doing it and to honor the breath. And so that's our goal, I think, Brian,
Yeah.
as in this world. And what we're trying to do is to bring people more back to themselves so that they can feel where they are and to know where they are and go from there versus floating around.
I always think that, I don't know, maybe it's a made up number that I'm coming up with, but 95% of the population never has an objective thought about
Mm.
ourselves, it's all subjective storytelling and making up, living in the past or the future. My company is called Lumen Mindfulness, Lumen Illumination Light. But if I had my time back, I might have called it Hourglass. Because again, we need to hang out more in the narrow neck of the hourglass, right? That's where things are happening. The stuff in the top half of the hourglass, that hasn't happened yet. And a lot of it won't happen. Or we hang out in the bottom of the hourglass, and well, that stuff has happened already. It's over. What you can do with, what you can work with is the narrow neck, right? That's where the action is. Yeah.
I have goosebumps. I
Yeah.
have never heard that analogy. I love it. I will credit you the next time I use it in the chakra
Yeah.
series
Of
because that
course.
is so,
Yeah.
that is poignant. Yes.
Yeah. We spend our time, and that's the human way. Basically, the nerdy science part of mindfulness, I usually don't get into a lot of this with people because they don't really, they want a nice experience.
Yeah.
But if you're paying attention to the weight of that orange you just mentioned in your hand and the texture of it, and maybe the scent of it, and noticing that it's putting a smile on your lips and maybe some moisture in your mouth, if you're doing
Mhm.
all that, you know what you're not doing? Thinking about your RSP payments that you missed this year, or going through a conversation you had with your great aunt where she said something nasty. Like
Or
you're not doing that.
scrolling.
Yeah. You're doing something that is here right now. And then generally, most of the time, if you are in here and right now, there's not a lot of threat with that. The threats come the ones that we kind of anticipate. And so if
Right.
you're constantly, I mean, again, I'm really good at doing this. We all are. It's the brain's way of survival is anticipating threats
Right.
so that, you're ready to do with it. But if you can
Exactly.
drop into what's going on right here and right now and appreciate like a kid would, right? If you put a heavy orange, juicy orange in a toddler's hand and watch that kid's face, right? It's
Yeah.
all curiosity. It's all
Yeah.
enjoyment. It's all completely experiencing that moment. We don't do that. Like the
I
orange is
know.
gone and you don't even know if you ate it. Like, did I eat it? Well, the peel is there. I guess I ate it. I don't know.
I know. I love that. I actually take oranges into every kid yoga and mindfulness class I teach.
Awesome.
And I do the experiment of letting them experience the mindfulness of it. And I'll ask, like, do you pay attention? And I get into like because kids are kind of, they're sponges and they're looking to learn. So I'll
Hmm.
explain, if you're holding the orange and you're paying attention to what it feels like, what it looks like, you peel it, and like the little spurts of juice comes out, and your mouth starts to salivate. What also is happening is it sends a signal to the brain to say, hey, food's coming, digestive system, get ready. And is able, and that builds up what needs to be, all of the acids and stuff in the belly,
Yeah.
and gets everything going. So your body is actually using its energy appropriately and efficiently, and everything feels good. I obviously use words that they would understand, but they're like, whoa, really? And I'm like, yeah, really, it's super cool. But if you're sitting in front of a TV show or a device and you're trying to eat your orange, guess what's not happening? None of that.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're reaching for an empty piece that's on a plate, for your plate, and there's nothing there. Right. And I always come back to a story of my children. Obviously, I've been doing this work for over 10 years. I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. So they're growing up listening to me do this work.
How
Uh,
lucky for those kids. Yeah.
right. And not saying that they're the most mindful, grounded humans. They're kids, they're children, and they're living their beautiful lives. But they're hearing it and they're picking up on stuff. And my 9-year-old was eating, I don't know, some type of snack. And she went to reach for it and it was gone. And she's like, did I just eat the last piece? And what had happened, I think her dad, like my husband, took her piece. And she was like, that wasn't very mindful of me if I didn't know that that was my last piece. And I'm like, what did you just say? And then she's
Yeah.
like, yeah, like, mom, you taught us that, to be mindful while we're eating, to know, like, to savor, to enjoy your food, because, that's an opportunity. The biggest and easiest opportunity to be mindful to me is while you eat.
Yeah.
Like, if we can't be mindful while we're eating, then it's going to be a hard time for us to be mindful while we're just out and life be lifing.
I love what you just said about your body prepping for the food you're about to eat. And that's kind of the like I love when you can match an experiential part of it, like
Yeah.
the smell, the flavors, the bursting of the juiciness of it, with like some science behind it, like what you're actually doing things that are beneficial for yourself.
Yeah.
You're doing one thing, you're not doing something else. We do a mindful eating thing with people and get them to eat with their wrong hand. Like if you're right-handed,
Mm-hmm.
put your fork in your left hand,
Yep.
put your fork down between every single bite and see what that feels like. Because again, if you're wolfing it down, your body is
Mhm.
not ready to eat it. You haven't released the salivary amylase. Your digestion is going to be screwed up because of it. You're going to feel gross afterwards. You're going to
Right.
overeat because we're not taking the signals in that oh, that's probably enough. Because you see
Yep.
another half bag of potato chips, so you're going to go for it. So I love that you do like, okay, here's the benefit of it. The kids get to enjoy a science part of it or
Yep.
the experience part of it, and you get into the science of it. And I think that that makes mindfulness appeal to a lot of people when they know it's not just something that's a nice thing to do.
Exactly. That's not just a Lindsay thing to do
Yeah,
because, like, oh,
yeah.
Lindsay, you can always just be mindful. Look at a life. Like, you can go out in a greenhouse. You got it made. You can be mindful. I'm like, girl, if you only
It takes
knew, like,
work. It
it takes
does.
work. It's a
Yeah.
practice,
Yeah.
it's a choice.
It's a choice and one that you need to make. And you're going to have days when you're not mindful and your days are going to be really good. But like, don't beat yourself up over that. I always say to my people, because if you're going to add guilt and shame to your mindfulness practice, I mean, forget it. Like, that's the last thing you should be
It's
adding
the
to.
opposite.
It's, yeah, it just be okay with like, oh, you know what? I've had a rough week and I didn't really practice. Interesting that I noticed that. Do I notice that I feel a bit more tense? Sleep wasn't
Mhm.
so great. Wow, my guts are not so good. Oh, maybe next week I can do better. And it's all just,
Exactly.
taking that information in and working with it. Yeah,
Holding space and grace for yourself
I like that.
is, yeah, like it is key. Because again, we talked a little bit about our love-hate relationship with social media. And like you get all these hashtags now, like and I am one of them. Like I slow living and mindful eating and mindful living. It's all a big piece, but it creates this culture again of needing to be perfect or needing to do it every single, like in a routine. Like you got to have your morning routine. Now I have a morning routine, but guess what, Brian? There's mornings that I don't get my 5 breath method in. There's mornings I don't take my olive oil and lemon shots. Are my those days not as grounded as the ones of which I do? Yeah, there's a difference, but it's okay because, like I say, life be life in, and it just didn't work out for that day.
Yeah.
So you just shift it, go back to that hourglass. What did you say? Where the hourglass,
Narrow neck.
the
The
narrow
narrow neck.
neck of
Yeah.
it, like go back to the narrow neck and start from there.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just, it's
Well,
okay. Let
it's
that
like
go.
going to the gym, right? Like people as a chiropractor, patients would come in and they'd be like, ah, oh, I went to the gym today, I didn't do much, or the next day I did a great workout. I'm like, just keep going back. And if you go to the gym today and all you do is go to the stretch area and stretch, great. You went to the gym today. And then
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow you do something differently. The same with your mindfulness practice. It's not going to be, sure, on a day-to-day basis, you might have some beautiful experiences like being with that orange.
Right.
Overall, you're going to build that muscle of just being aware of what's going on around you and being able to react appropriately, emotionally regulate around that. If you
Yeah.
just keep coming back to it, some days will be better practice than others. It's okay. You're still building the muscles that you need to build and be less tied to the outcome, be more tied to what's happening right now, because that's all we really have. Yeah. And so
That
much
is,
suffering is based on craving or aversion. So either you want something you don't have, or you want to get rid of something you already do have. So
yeah.
that craving, and think of anything in your life that causes suffering. And I challenge you to figure out, is there not craving or aversion in there? Most of the times there is,
Yeah.
wanting a reality that's not happening. So if you can just focus into the reality that is happening, good or bad, it's not all
Yeah.
Pollyanna-ish. It can just decrease a lot of suffering and increases the fulfillment of the like. 'Cause most of us have pretty good lives. We're
Yeah.
not A lot of us have, we're not dealing with food insecurity, perhaps, or maybe we're not dealing with a war-torn country at this point. So, the fact that our passports, if we're Canadian listening to this, the fact that your passport has a little maple leaf on it already gives us something to kind of celebrate and work with. And some days, maybe that's the best thing you have going for you is the fact that you have a Canadian passport. Everything else is crap. That's
Yeah.
okay. Focus on that. It doesn't need to be perfect every day. My life is far from perfect. I'm a teacher, but I'm also a learner. I'm
Yeah.
doing this as I go along. Yeah.
I love that. That's a beautiful lesson. Take a moment to breathe that in,
Hmm.
because it's so important. And yeah, life isn't, I love that you say Pollyannish. It isn't. And one thing that I've learned through my life, certainly wasn't a silver platter, certainly wasn't just easy go lucky. I wouldn't be here today being able to speak the way I speak to hardship and how to get through hard things if it wasn't for the hard stuff, hard moments, grief, trauma, all of the things that I had gone through in my life.
Hmm.
So to sit here and say, it's easy, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a choice, though. We do have, if you're listening to this right now, you chose to listen, right? So if you can choose to listen to a greenhouse chat on YouTube or wherever you're hearing this, um, then you can choose to show up for yourself in a new way.
Yeah.
And that is a very powerful point. But again, it takes belief in yourself. It takes time, it takes practice. And like you said, like if you show up to the gym and just stretch, you showed up.
Yeah.
So I always say to my chakra crew, just show up to the mat. Just show up to the screen that we're going to have a chat with, because I do it all through Zoom. Mostly just show up, and whatever you're able to receive it, and the rest will resonate and come later, come back to it.
Yeah.
If you show up to the mat and just breathe, then you're showing yourself, you're showing the universe that I'm showing up. And I also say to people, to clients, to students, that if you're upset with yourself because you came off the bandwagon, or because I always say, get off the bandwagon, don't be on it, because that's
Yeah.
society, that's not for you. Get in your own lane and just do you. But if you're upset, that's awesome. If you're to a point where you're upset that you didn't do the thing that you said that you were going to do today, then that's deadly, because you're acknowledging that you want to do something different.
Right.
But don't stay there. Like, let that slingshot of upsetness go so far, but come back to that recalibration point where you can just recalibrate, breathe it in, and then shift and move forward the way you want to move forward. But the longer you make that slingshot go, like the longer you stretch out that feeling of failure or feeling of defeat or feeling of, oh, I screwed up again, I suck, like whatever that negative commentary that we get looped into, the longer that goes, the harder it is to let it come back, or the more it comes back, it'll sling back in your face and hurt
Yes.
you.
I love
Right.
that. Slingshot. That's great.
Right. And so we come back to that recalibration of, hey, I'm here. I'm showing myself love. I'm doing this work. I made a promise to myself that I don't want to feel this way anymore. And yeah, I'm just gonna do what Lindsay and Brian said, and I'm just gonna breathe it in and show up again in 1 minute. It doesn't have to be a Monday. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the first day of the next month. It doesn't have to be, oh, I got to start again tomorrow morning when I wake. You can take a little nap and have a little segment refresher, as Abraham Hicks always say, but like you can do something, shake it off, but start again in 1 minute. If you had the thought that you need to start again, that's sign enough to just take a glass of water, breathe it in, and start again.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in New Year's resolutions because people put so much on that. And then if they falter on day two, what? They're going to wait for 364 more days to pass. I love what you say. Like, there's always a chance to start now. And it can be like a lot of people think that what you do or I do requires hour-long practices. Again, those are really beneficial. I love those. But at the same time, most of the people that I work with, we do practices that are 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
They're micro hits. And
Yeah.
so, yes, sitting in silence and picking up on the subtle clues of an hour-long sit, wonderful. But at
Yeah.
the same time, if that's not for you, but you can have maybe in the morning when you open your back door before you go down the steps, you take a second
Yeah.
and just take a breath. Maybe it's 8 seconds, 10 seconds, but you're actually there and then you move on. That will still build a skill set. I think that's what makes mindfulness, I want to say, more attractive to a lot of people than pure meditation. I think pure meditation is phenomenal, but I also know that a lot of the population, they're not there. So show them
Yeah.
mindfulness. You say, give them a minute on the mat. They go, oh, I could do probably 2 minutes.
Yeah, you'll start moving.
Maybe I'll
Your
do
body
five
will
minutes.
naturally
Yeah,
respond. Yeah.
exactly. And then you get the benefit. So it's about balance. It's not about being mindful or having a life that you or I have doesn't mean that we're in that all the time. We have to process emotions. There's going to be times when you are angry or sad or joyful, but there's going to be
I'm a
times
mother of two girls.
you got it. Wait till your teenage years. Holy smokes. But it's
Yeah.
about having balance so that, yes, I'm not always in this meditative space. I'm working towards it to have it as a trait that I inhabit, but it's balance. Like, yeah, there's
Yeah.
times when I need to deal with some other stuff that's not so great, but I deal with that and come back to practice. And it's the balance piece that keeps me moving forward in a place of contentment that I never had or thought I would have in the first part of my life. Like, I had no idea what contentment looked like, contentment internally. And it's the ability to come back to my own resources, my own breath, my own practice that makes me less reliant on social media, Netflix, a cocktail, whatever your thing is. Come
Yeah.
back to yourself over and over again. And it's, again, it takes time, but
Yeah.
it's worth the effort, right? It's worth the effort.
Truly. And we talked a little bit off record about happiness versus contentment,
Mm,
and how happiness is kind of it's like attached to external validation or external sources.
mhm.
Whereas if you once you get into the point of contentment, then you can actually be content but really upset and unhappy at the exact same time. Like
Yeah.
they can coexist, and that is a powerful place that takes quite a bit of work to get to. Um, or if once it clicks, you get it, like you get back to self. And that's what I love about Inside My Chakra series, is that we do the work from the ground up. We come back to our foundation. We come back to what it is that, like, that makes us feel safe, that makes us feel secure. We come back to what does what who am I? What does joy, like what brings me joy? Like
Yeah.
when I am laughing, what's making me laugh? Who's around me?
Yeah.
When I'm like into hee-haws, laughing fits, like what is where was I that morning? Who's around me? Because that is going to give you the feedback of, I need more of that.
Right.
And what am I doing that's taking me away from that? Like, I ask some students, when was the last time you had a laughing fit? Like, when was the last time you like
Lost your
died,
breath laughing. Yeah.
right? Like laughing, like face red, street, like what was it? When was it? And how did it make you feel? And then you get into that, and you're like, geez, man, it's been some time since I had. So, and we dive into all of that. And all of the reasons is that we kind of come back to what's robbed us of that. And oftentimes it's that hamster wheel, that loop of the things that you think that you have to be doing. And man, I've been there. I did the high school, to go to university, to get married, to have the kid. And then all of that, like all of that just faded away. I did what I thought I had to do. And then I went through a separation. I went through a pregnancy loss. I went through all of those hard things. And then I realized I wasn't living a life in Lindsay's lane. I was
I like
living a
that.
life the way I thought I was supposed to live it, because that's what success was, or that's what I was just supposed to do. Like, the first person in my one like side of my family to go through university. Like I thought I was supposed to do that. Like that's, but no, Linz, I realized life showed me really abruptly that I was meant to do more. And in order to get to that point, you need to tap into who you are.
Yeah.
And yeah, it took a lot of hardship to actually slap me in the face and wake me up, to realize that. And that is why I am so passionate about sharing this work, is because I don't want people to have to go through all of that just to find themselves, which, my kids know who they are. It's what's going to happen in the next decade of their life that's going to scare them away from that,
Right.
right? Pull them away from that. And that is where mindfulness comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of our suffering and grief comes from comparison, especially comparison to others. And that can tend to isolate because you say, and I feel bad for, I mean, we're bad enough with social media, but I feel bad for, your kids or teenagers who, well, when I was a kid, if school wasn't great, I came home and school didn't exist anymore, whatever that was. Um, but teenagers now, kids, the comparison is nonstop because in school you certainly notice it, and then you come home and you go online and see, oh, I wasn't invited to that little gathering or what. So the comparison piece really separates us from
Mm-hmm.
others, and we feel separate. And whereas I find mindfulness, if done long enough and practicing it, you actually start tapping into more empathy for common humanity. So instead
Mm-hmm.
of seeing the difference between Brian and Lindsay, and feeling, oh, well, Lindsay said this and I didn't say that, or whatever the situation is,
Yeah.
if you can drop the comparison piece and look for elements of common humanity, then it becomes a lot softer. So, like, there's people in our lives, we all have them, who drive us nuts, right? That's just,
Yeah.
if we
That's it.
stop, if we can actually, get that objective thought, step back from it and say, oh, I bet that person's feeling really threatened. And maybe that's why they're saying this or that. It becomes so much easier for you to be empathetic for
Mm,
them, for you to experience
absolutely.
less frustration. But that doesn't come without taking time to know yourself and notice
You
your
have to
own
love yourself.
reactions. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, people come to mindfulness for many reasons, but when they come to it and they go, oh, I'm finding that I'm just gentler with people in my lives, and they
Mm-hmm.
start to model that behavior, that is beautiful. I had a one-on-one client yesterday. We talked about the role that he plays with his nieces, and he's an incredible role model of patience. And I said, like, you're modeling mindful behavior around these kids, and they're seeing that. What a great gift to give your nieces. But a lot of
It
us
is.
don't do that. We just stay in our heads. We look at differences. We separate self from others, and it adds to grief and suffering. So I've had enough of that. I want less of that. Thank you very
I
much.
know. We are all one. We are truly all one. And it is easy to get separate from that thought, from that feeling, from embracing it. Um, and I always believe that by doing this work, by showing up for yourself, by learning to love yourself, it allows, once you can hold compassion, grace, and forgiveness for yourself, because I just went really fast over some of the hard things in my life. Was
Mhm,
I a victim at some of them? Maybe, but I was a leading participant. I wrote it, I directed it, I
mhm.
played in it. It was
Starring role.
starring role, right? Like I was all in it. I was not an angel.
Mhm,
But guess what I had to do? I had to open my heart and I had to forgive that version of me because she was doing the best that she could.
yeah,
That's all she knew from what she knew. By going through that, by getting to this point of forgiveness and compassion, I can now see the people in my world, in not like in my immediate world and around me in the periphery, and then in the bigger global world, and try and meet them and hold compassion and send love and send all of the beautiful good energy. Like I'm steady sending good energy out and trusting that whatever they need in order to be a pure good human, may they find it, because
right,
there's something missing, there's something lost, there's something hurt. And then you hold that empathy, like you said.
right. And it's kinder to yourself. It's kinder to others. Yeah, there are people in the world right now who are really, really troublesome. And it's not to say that you would stop fighting the good fight against things that you think are not righteous, of course. but can you do it from a place of empathy for yourself, those around you? Like, what are the reasons you're doing it? And then having a softness towards your own self, but doing the work. Again, it's a balance piece. It's not about closing your door and shutting out the world. That's not where we live. We don't live in that world. We live in a world with complications and with stressors. How can you, first of all, deal with that? So you're a level, I can't change your level of stress, Lindsay. What we
Nope.
can do is change your level of distress over the
Right.
stress. And then if you are less distressed, you can make better decisions and probably be more functional and more effective in what you're trying to do. But if you're caught up in emotions and anger and you have no idea what it is, you're just feeling overwhelmed, hard to move from there and be productive from there. Um, I like this analogy I often use. It's like life is a game or a box or a room, let's say a room with different colored ping pong balls, all bouncing at different frequencies, different heights. They're all just going. It's nuts.
Yeah.
And I ask you to focus on the one orange ball in there. They're like, how do I focus on one thing? Because there's so much else distracting you. If you can get your mind, I won't say quiet, because we don't ask people to empty their minds with mindfulness.
No.
That's not, but we're actually to be curious about something else. Some of those balls will start to drop to the floor. They're still there. You can deal with them later, but you can then calm yourself to the point where you say, okay, I have that one orange ball. I can focus on that and be effective with that versus being distracted by all life stressors. I'll get to the other things later. I just learned, over time, you learn to harness your concentration so that you
Yeah.
can have really good clarity on it and know what's going on around you so that you can react appropriately, safely for yourself,
Yeah.
appropriately in the situation. But again, if you're completely out of touch with your own self and your own feelings and what the feelings are, it's really tough to do that skillfully with other people, I find.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you have no tools, no techniques, if
Mm-hmm.
this is a conversation that you've are listening to and have never even really talked about mindfulness or meditation or, being aware or loving yourself, then it's a good place to start,
Absolutely.
right? It's a really good place just to say, okay, put your hand on your heart, take a breath. This is you. This is you. This is all you have control over. Our brains were never, ever meant to consume what we are exposed to this day and age.
You're
Like,
right.
we are consuming so much, it's beyond our control. It truly is. So much of what we consume has, like, we have no control over it, other than taking control over yourself, being the
Right.
best version of you that you can be, raising, if you're a mother or a parent, raising the children in your life to be the best versions that they can be, sending love out versus hate and anger and frustration, and really starting there, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in all of those balls in the room.
Yeah.
Then when you were saying that analogy, I was just like trying to figure out, like, that zinging. It's like that zinging energy. Like when you go, it's so hard. But when you can hone in on the one, then the rest of it just kind of fades away for now.
For now, we'll get back to it. Yep.
Mhm.
I think I reached out to you first. I'm not sure, or
You
maybe
did.
it, when I saw your MUGUP meditation, I just thought that was the most brilliant, brilliant idea. Because what you're doing, again, it's bringing mindfulness to people in a real natural setting, and we respond better. Like our DNA, we're, I don't know how many millions of years old we are as a species, but we're not used to, like we talked about this briefly before, you're not used to all the stimuli of cell phones and laptops and your big screen TV and blah, blah, blah. We are used to being in nature with broad vistas, natural stimuli like the sound of the wind in the trees or an ocean or the crackling of a fire, which just draws everyone in. Like if you
Right.
light a fire, everyone, without thinking about it, naturally gravitates towards it, and they sit and they stare into the fire like, what is that? That's something primal in us, but we don't give ourselves opportunities. So when you do your mug-ups and you're out on the barrens or you're on the coastline, that's going to just tap into people's ability to go, okay, my body's jiving with this, my body gets this is much
Mhm.
more calming, relaxing. There's lots of research on being in nature and how it can just calm the nervous system down. The parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. So mug up, like the whole idea, that Newfoundland connection, I was like, absolutely yes. and I have to come on one of your MUGUPs at some point. I'm home for a few months this summer.
That's
For
right.
the retreats, we got to get out at one point. We have to.
You know that that's going to
Okay,
happen. Can't
good.
not happen. But thank you for that. I am
Truly.
very, very proud and honored to be able to guide and host MUGUP meditation experiences. It's always so awesome to see the people that come out. Some people are very outdoorsy.
Hmm.
Other people are just lonely and have probably never lit a fire before by the ocean, but they're like, okay, this is a place where I can be around people who are
Yeah.
probably going to be nice and
Yeah.
kind, and I'm going to connect with them. And people, like I said, as soon as we light that fire, they pour up their coffee and everyone circles around. And my dad always said, um, a little bit about me from my background. I grew up going to an off-grid cabin my entire life. So I don't want to say I grew up in the woods, but kind of grew up in the woods. So lighting a fire is truly second nature to me, or first nature, I will say. But he always says that there's a lot every time he lights a fire, confident that every time he lights a fire and we're all around, he's like, there's a lot of stories in a fire.
Hmm.
And it really is. It's a place where you just naturally go introspective. You start thinking to yourself. It really pulls out um, memories. It evokes new thoughts. And then when you're in a circle of people, and after a MUGUP meditation, the fire and the MUGUP component is the last piece. So we've already just done like a releasing ceremony. We already just chatted a little bit about what it is to love yourself and what it is to feel grounded. So by the time we get to the fire in a MUGUP meditation
Yeah.
experience, people feel connected to themselves. They've got that. They're now sharing their stories. And then they're looking across the fire, the flame. They're like, oh, yeah, me too, actually. And there was one MUGUP meditation experience that I did without any specific theme to it. Most of the women that were there had struggled with mental health and or addiction. It just so happened to bring all of,
Hmm.
and they did not know each other. Some of them knew each other, but it just created this whole circle of them being able to peer support themselves. So it's really, really special.
I think it's brilliant. Fire is it's safety in our DNA, it's warmth in our DNA, it's food, it's cooking in our DNA. It's you said it's the circle, it's community. All
Yeah.
of those things are what draws us to the MUGUP experience. So like again, when I saw it, I was just, oh, this is brilliant. So really happy
Yeah.
that you're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love doing it. And I love inspiring other people to take it upon themselves to go out to the ocean, to take a friend, to have a MUGUP, to have a chat, or go
Yeah.
by yourself and connect.
Yeah.
So Brian, you mentioned that you're going to be here again this coming summer.
Hmm.
Tell me about all of the magical retreats that you're going to be hosting.
Great. We started this back a couple of years ago with Jill Curran at Maxim Vacations,
Right.
and I adore Jill.
She's doing amazing things.
She's the queen of tourism, I call her. So we did this thing where we started in St. John's, and most of the people weren't from the island. One or two were from the island. And we brought them out to Port Rexton. We stayed at Fisher's Loft. But again, it's getting them in nature. There was hikes. We were, on the Skirwing Trail, sunrise meditations. It was just getting them outside. So that went well. Last year, I did one at Cliff's Edge. And I always say to the people at Cliff's Edge, the property itself, like the
It's
accommodation,
the hardest place to leave.
it is incredible. But I always say to Craig, listen, if you had tents on the cliff here, you'd still sell out because the geography of the space. So we did a retreat there last year. And I always like to work with people who are local.
Right.
So Laurie McCarthy and Tina White and Nikki Taylor, they all came out and they offered, different access points to mindfulness. So this year, I think I have three lined up this year. So Laurie McCarthy and I are doing one in July. It's going to be a full day out at Laurie's property in Mobile.
I
That's
love the yurt.
yeah, in the yurt. So that's going to be, I think, July 26th. And then in the end of September, crossing over into October, Jill and I are going to do a 6-night kind of traveling mindfulness trip, some in St. John's, but again, heading out to Port Rexton. And then in October, the dates are still being finalized. I think I'm going to go back. Craig and I are going to figure out how to get me back to Cliff's Edge to do another 3-night retreat at Cliff's Edge. So, a destination retreat. So those
Love
three are
it.
happening, and there's a few happening here in Ontario. But that's my Newfoundland, and that's my passion, is getting myself selfishly and other people to Newfoundland. I just want to keep doing more of it. Yeah, the more I can, the
Same.
better.
I love it. And there's a MUGUP meditation experience obviously going to happen at one of those. But we'll get you out to into the greenhouse
Great.
during that, and during those one of those stays, maybe the summer ones. So you'll come see my grapes growing. And so if anybody wanted to, I could talk to you obviously all day long. We meant to have a 15-minute check-in sound check yesterday, and it lasted for over 45 minutes
I
just
know.
chatting.
I know. Yeah.
It's so awesome to hear your experiences and how you're taking it and interjecting it into the corporate world and doing amazing things. I am so grateful that you have found this passion and are doing this work. It's awesome. Before we sign off, is there one tip, one tool, one something that you'd like to share for mindfulness? Anything? Is anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So a lot of people have no experience or no, your people listening to this probably are going to be a very enlightened group. Thankful for you for that. But a
Mhm.
lot of people say, what do I need something quick? Like I need something on the elevator or after or before a Zoom call. What can I do? So an easy one to teach people, and friends of mine who are guidance counselors use it in their school as well. It's 5 4 3 2 1. Do you know that one? 5 4 3
Yes, I do.
2 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I love teaching 5 4 3 2 1. So basically, all you have to do is, let's say you just need a break. You need that reset. You mentioned taking a nap. Fantastic. If you can't take a nap, what can you do to reset your nervous system? And this will stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the
Right.
relaxation one. So basically, you stop on a dime and say, okay, five. What are 5 things that I can see right now? You're not getting into the stories of the thing, but like, okay, so five, I look at this mug and I'm looking at it objectively, noticing the shape, the colors, what colors or a pattern might be in the puffin on it. I can see the ring of coffee inside. You're noticing it just for a few moments. So look for 5 things like that you can see. And then you go 4 things that you can touch. So your mandarin orange in your hand, maybe just putting it against your skin, the surface of a desk. You basically connect touch with 4 things.
Yeah.
5 4 3 3. What 3 things, 3 separate things can you hear? So like you're
Mm,
like, no, it's pretty silent here. Okay, so A, silence is one. But then you get a little bit better. You go, oh, I can hear the hum of my computer. Interesting. That's 2. And then, oh, a bird flew by and squawked. That's 3. You're sinking into it objectively, not all the stories. Uh, 5 4 3 2. For what 2 things can you smell? You're
yeah.
basically engaging all your senses.
Right.
Okay, smell, nothing. Okay, well, go deeper. Can you smell your body lotion, your soap, your body wash, your shampoo? Can you smell um, the eggs in the kitchen you had an hour ago? Just trying to identify 2 different smells. And the last one, T, is for taste. And is there a taste in your mouth? A remnant of a meal you just had. Maybe it's a bit stale from the coffee I just had, but focusing in on those 5 things. So um, see, then touch, then hear, then smell, then taste. It takes about 2 minutes, three
Yeah.
minutes. That can completely shift your panic response, your mood response, and just get you to, okay, let's get going again. So that's an easy one to teach. Kids love that. It's kind of like playing I Spy with all 5 senses.
Yeah.
But it's mindfulness. Like that's mindfulness. That is what you're that's building muscles in the gym. So yeah.
I love it. I love it. That is my go-to for my children when they get into more like a hysteria
Mhm.
of like, and it just can't get themselves out, like whether they're afraid of something or they got hurt and they're like crying
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this. I'm
yeah.
like, okay, like let's, and then they'll even ask, like, do the 5 4 3 2 with
Oh,
me.
great. I love that.
Yeah. And I love that you're like the guidance counselors. The more we can get that into our schools, boy,
Mhm. Yeah, for
special,
sure.
special.
Mhm.
I absolutely love it. Um, Brian, you are a treat. I am grateful for you. Anybody who are your retreats already like linked to register?
Yeah,
Uh,
so the my website has them all. I think I need to pop Lori's on there. So Lumen, Lumen, mindfulness.ca. All the retreats show up there and the links happen from there. So yeah, thanks for that.
love
And
it.
thanks also for
Oh,
doing this kind of work. It's all like about abundance. There's so much out there. I love that you're connecting people. So nicely done, you. That's great.
I know. I love like connection is my favorite thing. It's with self, with the land, with others. My before we sign off, my 7-year-old asked me the other day, she was like, what's one word, mama, that would like describe your like what you do for work? Like what is your business? Like what's one word? And I'm like, geez, Alex Jane, I don't
That's
know
tough.
what's one word. And I'm like, connection. She was like, well, I'm gonna get a tattoo called connect because someone was talking about like kid tattoos or whatever. She's like, I'm gonna get a connection and love on my arm when I grow older. I'm like, oh, are you? Yeah, because I'll always remember that that's what my mama mean or stands
Oh, that's
for or something. I was like,
great.
my dear.
What
Um,
lessons to teach your kids? How awesome is that?
it's they're teaching me.
Yeah.
They're teaching me. This week has been a week.
Teacher and student all the time.
Always this week, I have been a student of motherhood, and it's been challenging. Coming back to my tools and techniques all week. Um, but yeah, it's connection is a really big thing. And I'm looking forward to many more chats with you and many more chats with others here in the greenhouse. I will leave all of Brian's information in the show notes below. So make sure you go check him out. And if you're in Newfoundland, if not, even if you're not in Newfoundland, come visit the island when Brian is here, tap into one of his retreats, and you will feel a connection like none other.
That's awesome. Very kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you.